Welcome to CoexSpace Global Summit, where we remember, reflect, and act. This is a place to inspire and make a call to action to change the world. Irene Greaves, thank you so much for being here in the CoexSpace Moral Courage Summit. We're so happy to have you here, and I would like to introduce you and get to know you better. You're the founder, CEO, and author of Lovescaping, a philosophy of life and organization dedicated to teaching love in action. Your core life skill is love in action. And you were born in Venezuela and shaped by a rich international journey across Europe, Africa, Asia, America, and you bring global lens to the work in education and human development. With a master's in education from University of Pennsylvania and 2 decades of experience in diverse settings, from school and non-profits to refugee camps and public health initiatives, you have developed Lovescaping as a practical, value-based framework for cultivating love through international action. The model centers on 15 core pillars, including empathy, humility, trust, communication, and hope. You teach Lovescaping to children and adults around the world, and in schools, communities, organizations, and company, building spaces of belonging, healing, and connection, which is what we lack the most right now. So we're so happy to have you here presenting Lovescaping, building the humanity of tomorrow by practicing love in action. On your TED Talk, you reflect the commitment you have transforming education and society by making love a foundational part of our lives to live, lead, and learn. Welcome so much. Thank you for being here.
Where did you learn to love? Pause for a moment and reflect on this question. We often say that hate is taught, prejudice is taught. But when do we ever ask, is love taught? Listening to countless stories of where and how people learned or didn't learn to love changed me. It also changed the way I listen, not just to the words, but to the silences, to the stories underneath, to the absences that shape so many lives. Listening, I've come to learn, is not just a skill, it's an act of love. It's what allows us to coexist. Because to coexist is to witness, to be with each other, even when it's hard. For me, coexistence begins with humility, with understanding that every human being has a frame of reference from which they view and understand the world. I am not better or worse than you. I am simply different. Humility removes prejudice and opens the path to empathy. If I believe that I am better than you, or that I am right and you are wrong, I am never going to step in your shoes to understand what life might look like from your perspective. Humility is a prerequisite to empathy. My journey with love began with my older sister, Tuti, who is differently abled. Tuti taught me how to be patient, how to be compassionate, how to be kind. She was my first teacher of love. She taught me that every human being is unique and different, and that difference is not something to be feared, but rather something to be embraced. That was my first shift, the first time something truly changed inside me. Years later, after living, studying, and teaching across 5 continents, from Venezuela to Europe, Africa, Asia, and the US, I came to understand that coexistence is not a passive state. It's not simply tolerating each other. That's a very low bar. Coexistence is an active, intentional practice of love. And love, I realized, is not a feeling, but an action. An action that transcends all differences. That realization gave birth to lovescaping, my philosophy of life, an humble attempt to operationalize and define love so we can teach it. Lovescaping is practicing love in action through its 15 pillars: humility, empathy, respect, communication, care, patience, honesty, vulnerability, trust, solidarity, liberation, gratitude, forgiveness, and hope. These are the building blocks of humanity, and they can be practiced every day. Can you imagine a world where every human being grows up learning to practice the 15 pillars of lovescaping? That is the world I am committed to building. It's where I choose to place my energy, my work, and my hope every single day. Because when we intentionally create spaces rooted in belonging and trust, we make room for something extraordinary, for people to connect, to unlearn where necessary and relearn, to heal, to grow in self-awareness, and to love together. What if love became the foundation of coexistence? I have learned that love can be taught, and when it is, everything changes. Because love, when practiced with intention, becomes a form of leadership. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that earns trust. The kind that shows up in how we hold space for one another, how we choose to listen, and how we lead, not with fear, but with love. Leadership doesn't look like control or command. It looks like presence, like patience. It looks like asking the harder question: how do people feel in my presence? Do they feel seen, heard, valued, safe? True power, transformative power, is quiet. It's the teacher who holds space for a grieving child, the counselor who doesn't flinch when a student expresses rage, the facilitator who helps a group find common ground. Spiritual practice, for me, is love in action. When things feel overwhelming, I return to my breath, to silence, to writing, to walking, to nature. I remind myself to be like the river and continue to flow. I ask myself, what would lovescaping do? Not love as a feeling, but love as a verb, love as discipline, love as moral courage. You see, fear is easy. It's easier to control people with fear. But love takes effort. It requires us to regulate ourselves, to choose kindness when it would be easier to shut down. To coexist is to live in that effort, to show up over and over again for one another. At the end of one of my lovescaping classes, an adult student of mine whose childhood was filled with the antitheses of love, told me, I have unburdened myself from so much pain and hurt. I learned to forgive, and for the first time in my life, I feel lighter. I feel peace. I realized that I am worthy of love, that in fact, I am love. That is coexistence. It's not just surviving next to each other. It's learning to live with one another, to make space for one another, to grow together. This is the invitation I want to leave you with. Reclaim love. Teach it. Practice it. Have the moral courage to make it the foundation of your leadership, your communities, your classrooms, your life. Because when we practice love in action, with intention, we do more than coexist. We awaken. And when we awaken, we remember a deeper truth, that there is no other. We are all one. This is the essence of Ubuntu. I am because we are. There is no I without we. And this is the revelation we reach when we live the 15 pillars of lovescaping. A life rooted in love. A world where we belong to one another. Thank you.